Good afternoon and welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show comes to you. We try and do it every day, right about 5 o'clock. We talk a lot about all the things that go on in the world of Pittsburgh sports. And of course, we are usually focused on the Steelers just because obviously they are the story of the day more often than not. So to me, I think when you look at the fact that the Steelers now are in the thick of the playoff race, it's important to remember that they basically now control what they have to do. And because of that, they're able to control their destiny, so to speak. It's going to be real interesting to figure out where they fit when it comes to all the things they have to do to get to the playoffs. The reality is they're going to be in the thick of it regardless of what happens, and they're going to be in the thick of it regardless of how many, even if they lose twice, they're going to be in it. So to me, when I look at it from that standpoint, that's why we spend so much time talking about the Steelers and breaking it down. Now, I will say there is, first of all, I guess I should say, we're brought to you by FanDuel Casino, or the app. We will talk a little bit about the things you can do on FanDuel app, and we will talk about the number of different things that you can do and ways you can bet games. And of course, we will probably focus it on the Steelers game against the Lions. Now, it's important to remember the Steelers and the Lions, I think, are kind of similar. It's just one of those situations where the Lions right now need to win a little bit more than the Steelers do. The Lions are, sort of teetering on the edge when it comes to the playoffs. They've been a team that, for the last few years have been one of the best teams in the NFC. Probably should have got to the Super Bowl at least once. But this year, if you look where they're at right now, they're 8-6. Got the same record as the Steelers. And they basically have Minnesota and Chicago on the road after this game. So, it doesn't get much easier. It doesn't get easier at all for them, actually. And, as a result, this is a game they absolutely have to win. You got to win at home. If you're a team that's fighting for the playoffs, you got to win your home games. And I think that, the Lions are right there in that conversation where they can't afford to lose many more games. And I think that's important to note. They're 8th right now. The Panthers are 7-7. In fact, I think if the Panthers are 7-7, they lost a game to the Saints this week. Although I'm looking Tampa 7-7 too. So the Lions would still be in the 8th spot no matter what happened in that game. But the reality is there are only 10 teams still alive in the NFC. The Cowboys are 6-7-1, Carolina's 7-7, and the Lions are 8-6. They get to 9-6, with a little bit of help. I mean, they could be in a much better spot when it comes to the playoff positioning. So I think what you have to, look at is they're a desperate team, and they're a team that basically, I think, if you look at where they're at, they're going to have to play, really sort of a desperate game and to make sure that they try and beat the Steelers. But now then, nevertheless, I think one of the most interesting things about this team and this year is the number of guys they've brought in. The number of guys they brought in who really, they brought in to just sort of fill a role and hope that, there were guys that just sort of were plugging holes, and they have done an amazing job. And I think, we criticize a lot when we talk about Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan. We criticize a lot. We criticize them for a number of things that they do. We criticize them for mistakes they make. We criticize them because the team doesn't win enough. We criticize them even when the team wins, we criticize them a lot. Every so often, however, you got to look at what they did and say, you know what? They've done a pretty good job of being very proactive. and going out and plugging holes and doing the best they can do to make teams better. That's the biggest thing. Like, I look at their defense and look at the number of guys they've brought in order to try and fill holes. You know, of their starting secondary, okay? 3 of their 4 guys in their starting secondary, 4 right now, actually 4 of their 5 if you count the slot corner. And, you know, the fact that James Pierre is hurt, but you've got Asante Samuel, Cal Duggar, Jalen Ramsey, Brandon Eccles. They're all new guys. They're all guys that weren't here last year. They're all guys that they either acquired in the offseason or acquired during the season. And these are guys that have basically they've rebuilt their entire secondary. Joey Porter Jr. is the only guy they have in here, in there that is not, you know, that was here that they drafted that's a homegrown guy. But they have been able to weather this storm of injuries that they've had on the defense because they've done a really good job of plugging holes. You go, you know, the same thing can be said, really, if you think about it, in a couple of other positions where they have newer players or new players that have come in and done a pretty good job of basically plugging holes and doing stuff to continue to make the standard, so to speak. We finally started to see DK Metcalf. He's starting to really start to take off a little bit. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is playing really well. I mean, when you knew that when they brought him here. I don't know that their numbers translated, but Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Adam Thielen are 2 guys who have absolutely made the the receiving core at least better from the standpoint of they run better routes and they do better, you know, than they have and all that other stuff. I think that's a good thing. So to me, you know, you look at that, and then of course you've got Kenneth Gainwell, who I don't think anybody really could believe would be as good as he's been. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. He's a guy that probably, if you think about it, I don't know that he is necessarily somebody that when you brought him in, everybody thought, wow, boy, he's got a shot. He's got a real shot. Because he just sort of was just somebody that was who they were. Like he basically is somebody you said, well, you know, where he was at, you know, he was just kind of an okay player. I don't know that he was great. I don't know that he's a star. I don't know that he's somebody who's going to change the course of things. He'll be a nice little complimentary back without, you know, for Jaylen Warren. Well, I think what we found is Jaylen Warren probably is not good enough to be a starting running back. And Kenneth Gainwell is probably the combination of 2. Kenneth Gainwell has probably been a little bit better because he's the ultimate weapon. As Mike Tomlin said, here's a guy who can return kicks. Here's a guy who can cover kicks. Here's a guy who has actually, covered punts. Here's a guy that is really good out of the backfield. He's good, on third down when he has to be a blocker. He's a good football player who makes plays. But again, those are the kind of guys you have to go get if you're going to survive a long season. And the Steelers, the Steelers have benefited greatly by being willing to make changes, by not falling in love with certain guys. I mean, I'll give you a great example, Darius Slay. You know, when it became clear he wasn't good enough, he was gone. Period. Darius Slay was like, no, you know what? He's no longer good enough. He can't play anymore. Period. And I think that's what you do if you're the Steelers. You bring guys in, but you can't get married to them, and they haven't. But their depth has been incredible if you think about it. It's been really incredible what they've been able to do to weather the storm of injuries. It's been really incredible, actually, if you think about it. And I think that's where we're at with it from that standpoint. It's like you went out and got a brand new secondary, essentially, and they've been able to play a level high enough to give you a chance to win. Now, one of the things that you say quite often, is that, well, I don't believe that beating the Dolphins means that much. And it doesn't. They were a dead team walking. They had, some really ridiculous path to the playoffs, which, they would have had to win like 3 games and other teams would have had to lose 3 games. And, it was one of those things that probably wasn't going to happen. Their chances to make the playoffs was like less than 5% when they started the game on Monday. So, they were a team that really, and they're not very good either. I mean, they did okay when they played against the Bills the one game, but that's a division game that sometimes those things, those division games kind of go that way. To me, I don't think so. When I look at the Dolphins, they were a dead team walking. And so beating them the way the Steelers did, yeah, that's what good teams should do to bad teams, right? That's what good teams should do to bad teams. They should be able to step up and beat them. And beat them in a way that, okay, it's really, really now very simple to watch, but they are basically now in a place where they should beat bad teams, and they did. And they did. And so I feel like it's now, now we're at a point now where how do we judge them? Simple. How do we judge them? Go beat Detroit. Detroit's not great. Detroit's secondary's been banged up. Detroit can't, defend the pass. Detroit's defense is really reeling right now. Yeah, they're going to score some points. It's a good offense, but you know what? Outscore them. Go beat them. Go on the road and win that game, and then all of a sudden we'll start talking about where this team should go. Because to me, when you think about it that way, it's really, really difficult, I think. It's very, very, very difficult to continue to win week after week after week after week if you're not really a good team. And so to me, I look at Detroit and I'm wondering if maybe the whole experiment with Dan Campbell is over. Like, I wonder if the whole entire thing is now going to fall apart over the next year or two, just from the standpoint of, if you think about it, here's a guy who basically, was the rage, all the rage or whatever, when it came to, the fact that he was so aggressive and all the stuff that he does. Well, guess what? They're hanging on by a thread. But regardless, they're still a good team. They're still at home. So because they're still a good team and they're still at home, well, guess what? That tells me that you got a problem, a real problem, if you're not who we think you are. So I believe that when it comes down to this game against the Lions, it's going to tell us everything we need to know about those Steelers, probably and then some, right? I mean, I feel like it's going to be one of those things where if they play well, even if they play well and lose, I think most people will be able to live with it. But if they play well, if they don't play well and they get dominated, then I think a lot of people will wonder, where this team is at. And I think that's what it is, really. So this is an important game, but I think one of the things is you look at the guys that have been brought in, they all have contributed in some ways. Some, like Darius Slay, maybe negative, but they all have contributed in some ways. And that's important, to note. So that is now something you've got to think about. And I feel it is like one of these situations where, the Steelers, if you look ahead at what they have to do here, I think that they have the ability to go out and for the next, I don't know. I think the next 3 games, they have the ability, if they can get a couple of guys like TJ Watt healthy and rested, they have the ability to go into the playoffs probably in the best shape they've been in a long, long time. And I think, when you look at TJ Watt, there are some people that say, you try and get him back. Here's what I would tell you about TJ Watt. They proved the other day they can win a game without him, which they couldn't do a few years ago. But since they are, have proven that they can do, they can actually win games without him, I feel like the move probably is to let him heal for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Let him rest and let him heal. And if he's able to rest and he's able to heal, you might have a guy who will be able to give you a lot more than he has in the playoffs because he'll be healthy and he'll be rested. And that's what I would tell you. The Steelers probably have, because of the depth that they probably have the luxury of doing things like that now. Sure, you want to win. Sure, you need to still win some games. But the reality here is when it comes to TJ Watt, you have proven you don't need him to win necessarily right now. And the thing is, you go to Detroit, the game isn't all that significant if you win it or lose it. It's important to win. You don't want to, but you want to win. But you don't have to go all out to win. And the thing about it is, if you get to a point where the next week you've got the Browns, hopefully you could beat the Browns without TJ Watt, which would mean you can give him 2 or 3 weeks off and let him get healthy and rested. And then in that Ravens game, if it matters, then obviously you play him. If it doesn't matter, maybe you play him 5 or 10 or 12 plays just to kind of get him a little bit back up into game speed because he's got to play the next week in a wild card game. But I maintain that one of the biggest problems they've had in the playoffs is they haven't had a healthy TJ Watt. They haven't had a healthy and rested TJ Watt. They just haven't. And I think that's the important thing. So it really kind of bothers me. They're probably going to do everything in their power to, try and get TJ Watt back into the mix. To me, the move is basically very simple. Very, very simple. And that is, I think the move is to rest him for a few weeks and let him get healthy. So it's just going to be, a situation where you play that by ear, but they probably are going to have the luxury because honestly, I feel like the Ravens are going to implode over the next couple of weeks. I don't know why. I mean, Lamar Jackson has the flu again or something. He's missing practices. It's a problem. I mean, they're going to look back at the last couple of weeks and say, how did we lose to the Bengals and how did we lose to the Steelers? That's the funny thing. Had they won those 2 games, which, losing to the Bengals was an embarrassment. Lamar Jackson was terrible in that game, and they basically handed the game to the Steelers. If they win those 2 games, I mean, they're talking right now, they are 9-5, 1 game ahead of the Steelers with all the tiebreakers in their favor. It's a completely different feeling. And, I think the thing about it is the Ravens this year just feel like it's not going to happen for them. Everybody keeps waiting for them. Oh, well, they've got Lamar Jackson, just like everyone kept waiting for Patrick Mahomes. Oh, they've got Mahomes. The Chiefs will figure it out. They didn't figure it out. They didn't figure anything out. So I don't know that it's necessarily true that that Lamar Jackson and company are going to figure this out. Maybe, but they feel like, to me, a team that is on the brink of probably just imploding. And I feel like once they miss the playoffs, John Harbaugh will be fired. They'll change the whole situation, maybe even look to trade Lamar Jackson. And I know you say, well, why would they do that? Here's why they should think about doing that. For the same reason I said the Steelers should have traded T.J. Watt a couple of years ago. And that is because I feel like Lamar Jackson is breaking down now. His value is still really high. You could get a ton for him. But I don't know that you're ever going to see him running like the wind like he has in the past, running all over people, making big plays with his legs, all that stuff. I just don't believe that that's going to happen. That's, to me, what is, the biggest thing about figuring out when it's time to move on from an all-time player, right? It's just kind of one of those things where you've got to say, boy, if we miss on this, it's going to be a big problem. But I don't think we're going to miss on this. The Steelers, to me, they didn't have the courage, or whatever you want to say, to do that with T.J. Watt a couple of years ago. And as you can see, he's been on the decline ever since, and they still gave him another contract. And it's mostly, I think, because they've convinced themselves there's all this stuff about one helmet guys they need to continue to do. I just don't think that they thought it through like they should have. And I think that the Ravens might have to think about it as well. And I will tell you this much right now. The Steelers have what I would call a bit of a firewall in standing in front of them, and that is they've got the Browns with Shedeur Sanders. Has there ever been, just as an aside, has there ever been a more dumb, a more idiotic, a more disingenuous discourse about a player than that goes on with Shedeur Sanders? You listen to his super fanboy types, and some of them in the media, in fact, which is embarrassing for them. Everything is everybody else's fault. Stefanski's trying to, undermine him. He's trying to sabotage him. He's trying to make sure that he's not successful for whatever reason. I don't know. The fact that he had a decent game against a horrible Titans team, all of a sudden now, oh boy, everybody that was his haters, you got to eat it now. Look at this. This past week, he threw 3 interceptions. And of course, we had all these idiots on social media trying to explain how none of them were his fault. And there was this thing about, Stefanski was trying to sabotage him because he gave him the wrong wristband, which he didn't. The wristband fell off, and of course, it got shuffled or whatever, but they corrected that very quickly. Nobody's been able to explain to me why Kevin Stefanski would want to undermine Shedeur Sanders. It makes no sense, but I guess, when you just want to spew hot air, I guess you can go there. So what I'm telling you is I look at what they have next week against the Browns, and I think they're playing against a bad team who's out of the playoffs, who's got a bad quarterback, who's not good at reading defenses. They should kill them. Even if they don't play well, they'll beat them. Even if they don't play well, they'll beat them. So that's kind of a firewall in some ways, because you're getting a win next week. That'll be your 9th win. Of course, the never having a losing season situation continues, but the reality is it'll be your 9th win. And if you get your 9th win, I think actually you don't even need to win. I think if you go 0-2 and you're 8-8 going into the last week, you still control what happens with the Ravens because you have the tiebreakers. So all you have to do is win the game. But I just don't know, if the Steelers think like that. But to me, when you've got a game, a game like this, it's an NFC game against a good team, but it's an NFC game. You're probably not catching Jacksonville. All you have to do is beat the Ravens. I don't know. I don't know if I go all out to win it. I basically make sure that I do everything in my power. If I'm, if I'm going to be honest with myself, I'm doing everything in my power to make sure all of my guys are healthy at the other end of the game. And I think that's, what the Steelers should do. It's interesting, yesterday when we looked at the line for the Steelers, Detroit was favored by 7 points. Over-under was, 51. It was 49.5. It's actually inched up to 51.5. The Lions, it was 6.5. It's now inched up to 7. So, to me, I look at it and I say, if you're going to want to, do a little betting, there's the numbers from Facebook. From FanDuel. Download FanDuel Casino on your phone. Make sure that you get on there. They have all kinds of specials and whatnot for new people that sign up. But you can do it from your phone, your computer. You can do whatever you need to do. At the end of the day, what you're going to do, you're going to go to your FanDuel app. It gives you the ability to bet on every single game. There's all kinds of different ways that you can bet on the Steelers game on Sunday, right? For instance, if you want to say Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to score 2 touchdowns or more, you could bet on that. And on FanDuel right now, it's plus 210, which means you lay 100, you win 210. David Montgomery to score 2 touchdowns, plus 550. Here you go. Let's see if we can find something here for you with the Steelers. Do you believe? Let's see. They don't even have him on here right now, but I'm sure they will. But if you believe that Jonnu Smith, this could be the week that he catches 2 touchdown passes, you know what? You bet 100, you win 5,000. So there's a lot at work here. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. Connor Heyward is actually plus 6,500 to score 2 touchdowns. And, of course, with the tush push, it gets very interesting. So, to me, go to your FanDuel app, download it, make sure that you download and get yourself set up. You hook your bank account or your credit card or whatever, and then all of a sudden you can make bets on every single game and every single sporting event that's going on. As a quick aside, in case you didn't see it, the Penguins actually got sold today. I don't know if it's good or bad. I think the Fenway Sports Group obviously has a reputation for being really good, but this is now kind of a complete unknown. They sold it to the Hoffman family out of Chicago. Apparently, Mary Lemieux will not be a part of the new group either, but it will be interesting to see because they don't have really much of a track record. It'll be interesting to see what they do to the Penguins. And, of course, the Penguins are one of those teams where they've enjoyed so much success for so long, right, that you almost expect it. But we will see if they're able to continue that. We'll see what this ownership group does. We'll see what this ownership group, is able to do in terms of making sure that they make the team better. That's just really where it's at. So then, to me, but it should be stressed, there won't be a Mary Lemieux involved in this. So don't get your hopes up. For him to return to ownership, it's just not going to happen. It's one of those things where I think this is a completely sort of unknown, because nobody really knows how they're going to be in ownership, and everybody is sort of bracing themselves and try to figure out if this is going to be a group that really knows what to do, or is it going to be a group that's a mess. We'll explore all that, but until we meet again, good night.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.